Hi, everybody. So I'm here to talk tonight about how to apply the Baha'i Faith, but since a lot of you are learning about the Baha'i Faith, I thought I'd start with a short introduction of the Baha'i Faith itself. So I've been a Baha'i for 10 years. I grew up Jewish. I became a Baha'i at the age of 49 in 2015, so it's been a 10-year journey for me, a wonderful 10-year journey, and I met lots of wonderful Baha'is from all over the world. Traveled all over the world as a Baha'i. It's been really a privilege. But what is a Baha'i? There's a lot of definitions of a Baha'i. Abdul-Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the faith, he said essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, that to be a Baha'i is to love the world and to serve humanity. So love God, love the world, and serve humanity. That could also be what it is to be a Christian, or to be a Jew, or to be a Muslim. If you're following your faith, you do that. It's all about service. What Baha'u'llah said, maybe I'll just start at the beginning. In the 1840s, there was a great fervor all around the world, among Jews, among Christians, and among Muslims, that something was going to happen, that a messenger was going to happen. A messenger was going to come. The Jews were expecting the Messiah, the Christ. The Christians, the return of Christ. And the Muslims in Persia were expecting the 12th Imam. The Jews expecting the Messiah in 1840, I'll save some time, did not see the Messiah. But they had two other things they were expecting. Number one, a return to the Holy Land, which has happened from less than 10,000 Jews in 1844 to over 7 million today. And a technological revolution that was predicted in the Jewish Zohar, their mystical book. 75% of the inventions in the history of the world have happened since 1844. Cars, trucks, planes, plastics, skyscrapers, everything. Even, and this is going to shock some of the younger people in the audience, these did not exist in 1844. But the Jews didn't see the Messiah, so I moved to the Christians. As the Jews were searching in vain for the Messiah, Christians all over the world, hundreds of thousands of them, were waiting for the return of Christ. In Germany, in France, in Switzerland, in Holland, Sweden, England, Ireland, and in North America, and many other places. Hundreds of thousands of Christians were waiting eagerly for Christ to return and the world to end. Who said this? It was a lot of prominent people. Maybe you have heard of Martin Luther. He predicted it would happen by 1840. John Wesley, the founder of the Methodist faith, predicted it would happen in 1836. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon faith, he said in 1843, there are those of you of the rising generation who will not pass away till Christ returns. And the most famous one here in America, a contemporary of Mr. Smith, was a man named William Miller, who started out as a farmer, had this kind of miraculous thing happen in the War of 1812, and he was transformed, and he started searching for the return of Christ. Read the Bible fervently for 2 years, and he decided, based on Bible signs, that Christ was going to return exactly in 1844. And he convinced 100,000 people that he was right. And they were all waiting on October 22nd, 1844, looking up in the sky for Christ to come in clouds and waiting for the world to end. Has anyone heard of the Great Disappointment? The world did not end on October 23rd, 1844. So when the sun came up on October 23rd, 1844, it was the Great Disappointment. Miller was shocked. He had read and reread the Bible, and he was sure he was right. He'd done his calculations over and over again. In 2,300 days, the temple shall be cleansed. He starts with when the temple's rebuilt. He adds 2,300 years, gets to 1844, convinces 100,000 people he's right. What went wrong? Not Miller, it was the Bible. You see, the Bible was wrong. And that was the problem for all the Adventists. It was the King James Bible they were reading. And the King James Bible, it says, when's it going to happen, Jesus? And Jesus says in several places, end of the world. But actually, that's not what it said. That was a mistranslation specifically in the King James Bible that's been corrected in all the new Bibles that now say end of the age. So Miller and all the Adventists like him should have been looking for a new age, but they were looking for the end of the world, and that wasn't going to happen. And there's other parts of the Bible that make that very clear, like the 20th chapter of Revelation, which talks about 1,000 years of peace. How do you get 1,000 years of peace if the world ends? That doesn't make sense. And then a New Jerusalem in the next chapter. So it makes sense that there's going to be a new age. But too late for the Adventists, so we move on to the Muslims. Now, Here's one of the most interesting things about the Christian Bible. I point this out to everyone I meet. 1260. Raise your hand if you come from a Christian background. Raise your hand high. And raise your hand if you come from a Christian background and you're not a Baha'i. Okay, we got a few. So here's the question. The number 1260 is in the Christian Bible 10 times, 7 times in the book of Revelation, and 3 times in the book of Daniel. Anybody, what does it mean?
It's the year of the end of the age.
The end of the age. So 1260 is the end of the age. What age?
The end of the Adamic cycle and for a new age to be ushered in, as prophesied in the book of Daniel of, I forget the wording of it, but it was mentioned in both chapters 8 and 9.
Yes. And I think the 7th chapter too. 9th chapter, you're right, 9:27 is one of the verses. So yes, you're right. And 7 chapters in Revelation. So there's an age, right? But do we know what that means?
From a Baha'i perspective, I'd say yes, but...
No, not from a Baha'i perspective. From a Christian perspective. No idea. So from a Christian perspective, it doesn't mean anything. And the reason is, it's not a Christian year at all. Here's the coolest thing, I think, about the Christian Bible. It's a Muslim year. So that 1260 is in there 7 times in the book of Revelation. Most common, the most well-known is 11:2 and 11:3. 2 witnesses will reign for 1,260 days or 42 months. But this doesn't really mean anything to Christians. It means a lot to Muslims. You see, after Muhammad comes the first Imam, Ali. He's his chosen successor. He's killed. The next 10 Imams are killed. The 12th Imam disappears in what year? 260 Muslim years. And according to Muslim prophecy, he's supposed to return in 1260. So it comes that in the year 1260 in Persia, not reading the Christian Bible, almost everybody is waiting for the 12th Imam to come. Most people waiting for a 1,000-year-old man to come out of hiding because he's gone into hiding or occultation. So they're all waiting for a 1,200-year-old man. For some of you younger people, would you believe if I told you I was 1,000 years old? No? My kids think that, but I'm not. So there's no such thing as a 1,000-year-old man. And so that didn't happen. But there was a group called the Sheikhis, and the Sheikhis were waiting for a young man to come. And that's precisely what happens. And that kicks off the era that we're in, the Baha'i era. So the Bab declares in the year 1260, 1844, by the way, Miller was right, in Christian years, 1260 in Muslim years is 1844 in Christian years. The same exact year the Jews start returning to Holy Land with the Ottoman Edict of Toleration, the same exact year that Miller predicted, and many other things happen in 1844. For example, the theory of relativity, that was actually the draft version, was finished in 1844. The telegraph was invented in 1844. The very first telegraph happened the day after the Bab declares. He declares on May 23rd, 1844, the very next day. Not to be outdone, Samuel Morse sends the first telegraph. What hath God wrought about the coming of a messenger? He did not know a messenger had declared the previous day. So this shoots like wildfire all across Persia. The Bab gets over 100. By the way, the Bab means the gate, as in a gateway to a new age. The Bab declares as the 12th Imam. He gets over 100,000 followers. Over 400 religious scholars become followers, believers in him. One of the most prominent is a man named Wahid, who was sent by the king, the Shah himself, to kill the Bab. They meet 3 times. He doesn't kill the Bab. The 3rd time they met, the Bab revealed right in front of Wahid the equivalent of 1/3 of the Quran in a single setting, single day. And Wahid said, after seeing this, if all the forces on earth were leagued against me, I would not abandon my confidence in the success of this cause. He became a follower, as I mentioned, 400 other religious scholars. And so the mullahs of Persia had to make a decision. Were they going to accept the Bab? They'd been promising for centuries that as soon as the 12th Imam comes, they accept him. You see, there's no clergy in Shia Islam. The mullahs had arisen, borrowing the power from the 12th Imam, guaranteeing they're going to give it back as soon as he comes. And now he comes with 100,000 followers plus. Some of the most prominent religious scholars in the country vouching for him, 400 scholars all told, and they have to decide. Do they just merely fulfill what they've been promising for centuries, or do they put him in jail? So, anyone who's not a Baha'i, what do you think they did? Who's never heard this before? What do you think? Jail. They put him in jail. You've been reading your religious history. But the jailer became a believer, and they put him in another jail. That jailer became a believer. So they put him on trial, asked him who he was. He said, I am the promised one you've been expecting for 1,000 years. So they had to kill him, which they did. They killed him, and they killed over 20,000 of his followers. The last remaining leader was a Persian nobleman by the name of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah was known at the age of 13 for his great wisdom, innate wisdom. Every messenger of God has innate wisdom. By his early 20s, he's known as the father of the poor. His dad was one of the wealthiest men in Persia. So this kind and wise nobleman, almost as soon as the Bab declares, became a follower and a great leader in the Baha'i cause. And eventually in 1852, he was the last one standing. They'd killed over 20,000 Babis, desperately trying to hold on to their power. Baha'u'llah was the last major leader standing. So they arrested him, accused him of a crime he didn't commit, tortured him, and put him in a place called the Black Pit. And it was in the Black Pit that Baha'u'llah saw a vision of a maiden who said he's the promised one of all faiths. For the Hindus, the 10th avatar. For the Jews, the Messiah. For Christians and Muslims, he would be the return of Christ. For Buddhists, the 5th Buddha. Different names, but every major faith is waiting for a redeemer. He's that redeemer. Baha'u'llah came out of that prison and for 40 years was exiled and revealed the equivalent of 60 Christian Bibles. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. What did he say and how do we apply that to our lives? Baha'u'llah's message revolves around this: unity. I have 4 of these t-shirts. I wear them as many days of the week as I can. When I'm not wearing this, I wear other Baha'i shirts. So, unity. Baha'u'llah revealed a roadmap to world peace. Raise your hand if you think that's something we should think about. Raise your hand high. Okay, if you're not raising your hand, I think we got everyone. What could be more important than world peace? The problem is most of the world doesn't think it's possible. As a Baha'i, I can't speak for all Baha'is, but I can probably tell you most Baha'is would agree with me. I believe, because it says so in the writings, that world peace is not only possible, but inevitable. To those of you who aren't Baha'is, that may sound a little over-hopeful, but it isn't. World peace is inevitable. Baha'u'llah has said so. A lot of times I talk to people who don't have a lot of faith, and they think there's no possibility whatsoever that we can ever get to peace. And I agree with them, if there was no God. But everything is possible with God. Or if I'm talking to a Christian, I say everything's possible with Christ. Now let me talk a little bit about that in terms of Christ. Who is Baha'u'llah? Well, Baha'u'llah is Christ. But what is Christ? Christ is simply the anointed one. Jesus was the anointed one. So was Muhammad. So was Buddha. And so was Baha'u'llah. Every 500 to 1,000 years, God sends a messenger. And those messengers are all perfect. You can't be better than perfect. We ordinary humans are not. I can tell you I have some very close friends and a spouse that would tell you very quickly how imperfect I am. You'd have to take a few days to hear all of that. But all of us humans are very imperfect. But the messengers of God are different. The messengers of God are perfect. And so, is Baha'u'llah more perfect than Jesus? No. Is he less perfect than Jesus? No. Each one of those messengers, according to Baha'u'llah, is a perfect mirror of all the beautiful virtues of God: love, kindness, compassion, truth, justice. And we are the recipients of the light that they bring to the world. And in every age, that light is renewed. So what does the messenger of God come to do? They come to renew that light and to give us the specific directions for each age. In this age, it's unity. So what does Baha'u'llah say? He says, I've come with the most great peace. And we get it when we understand the oneness of humanity. What do we have to do? Okay, sexism. Women are equal to men. Get rid of that. Racism. There's a single human race. He's saying this in the 1800s. People did not believe that then. It's scientifically proven. We need to get that in our hearts, not just our heads, but in our hearts, that there is a single human race and that we need to look at everybody as our brothers and sisters, period. And everybody should be viewed exactly equally. Same thing with nation. The earth is but one country, says Baha'u'llah. The earth is but one country and mankind as citizens. And all these great religions that we're born into, I was born into a Jewish family, others into a Hindu, into a Christian, into a Muslim. There's but one God. And the way I describe it is this way. God sent a messenger, the messenger of God. And 3,500 years ago, he led the Hebrews out of Egypt. And 3,000 years ago, he led people in Persia and created the great Persian Empire in his wake. And 2,500 years ago, that messenger came back in Nepal and India and led to the great Maurya Empire, which had 2 million square miles. And 2,000 years ago, despite being crucified after a mere 3 years of ministry, he created in his wake the great Byzantine Empire, a wonderful empire that served the world. And 1,400 years ago, in the wake of the messenger, we had a great golden age that lasted 500 years and saw the invention of algebra and algorithms and the reinvention of almost every field of human endeavor. Do you notice I didn't say any names? The names, the world of names, is where we start getting into problems because people fall in love with the name. The name, and I'll say this, it may almost be insulting, the name Jesus doesn't matter. The person of Jesus matters. The spirit of Jesus, that Christ spirit that Jesus had, that divine perfection matters. A rose by any other name would smell just as sweet, according to Shakespeare. And Jesus by any name would smell, whether he was called Buddha or Gautama the Buddha, whether he was called the Christ, whether he was called Muhammad. That great spirit is recognizable. We need to tune to the spirit, not the name. And that goes for countries and race and all the other things we think divide us, politics. Anything that divides us, according to Baha'u'llah, is something we need to do away with. So we as Baha'is have to avoid partisan politics. Now, how do we apply this to our lives? So let's take this from this 10,000-foot view and let's bring it down a little bit. The first thing we do when we meet someone in the street, Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah. So Baha'u'llah's son and successor was Abdul Baha when Baha'u'llah ascended in 1892, which was last week in 1892. He said in writing that his son, Abdul Baha, would be his successor, and he was a wonderful successor, and he led the Bahá'í Faith until he passed away in 1921. And they're building a beautiful shrine as we speak for him in Akko, Israel, which hopefully in the next year or two will be completed. Abdul Baha said, "See his face in everyone we meet." So see God in everyone we meet. Think about this. Think of the worst people we meet. And I have to remind myself of that every day. The worst person, the person you hate so much, who's a terrible, and you can fill in the blanks as to how terrible they are and why they're terrible. But now see that person. Now I want everyone to imagine this. Imagine that person you're supposed to hate. And then I want you to see the face of God instead of that person's face. Can you hate them? You see, each of us is a soul. And the goal of that soul is what? To become a good person. And some people are just better at it than others. And so if someone, and I recently had this experience, and so what do you do as a Baha'i? You pray for that person. And I recently prayed for two people who have given me a lot of trouble. I went to the threshold of Baha'u'llah, put my head down there and said, first two people I prayed for were two people that have given me an awful lot of trouble. And I prayed for them because they need it, in my opinion. And I didn't pray that they'd be incinerated. That was a thought, but I prayed for their well-being. I prayed for their well-being. And I think that's important, to see them as divine beings, every one of us. I remember I come from a Jewish background. I went to temple with my parents after I became a Baha'i. And we're having a discussion after services, after Jewish services. And the question I asked is, do you want Adolf Hitler in heaven or hell? I was the only one who said heaven. Now, mind you, we lost 20 members of our family in the Holocaust. Mind you that there was a lot of suffering in my own family, but I wanted him in heaven. Maybe after a little suffering, maybe after a little justice. That's up to God, not me. We're not the judge of anybody. But every soul I want to be in heaven because we have to love them for their humanity, everybody. And I chose him as an example. But whoever you think is like Hitler or whatever, the Ayatollah or whoever you think is the worst person in the world, they're human. And so if they're struggling to be a good human, we hope that they can be better. We don't wish ill on anybody as a Baha'i. So that's the first part. Look upon everybody and see the face of God. And then there's one of my favorite books in the Baha'i Faith is The Hidden Words. I've memorized the Arabic. I get to the Persian. I've memorized all the Arabic. And there's one that starts off with, "O children of men, know you not why we created you all from the same dust, that no one should exalt himself over the other." I'm just going to go with the start of that. So think about it. What reasons do we have to exalt ourselves? I recently had a situation where I'm like, gosh, we had an entrepreneurship contest in my local community, and actually it was in a college near my local community, and they didn't invite me, and I told my best friend, I said, "Why didn't they invite me? I'm a great entrepreneur." And she looked at me and laughed and said, basically told me to shut up. And I realized when she said that, it's like, okay, I may think I am, and I might be, but if they don't want me, they don't want me. It's fine. And don't feel like you're the best. And maybe I wasn't supposed to be there. And the person they invited is a wonderful person, a wonderful, very successful businessman. And so I don't have to be everywhere. And I was just so excited because there were a couple young kids from Congo at this local college getting in on, and I love these kids. And I just wanted to be there and support them. But you know what? She said, "You're showing a little ego." And she was right. She was right. Because you know what? It's not about how great you are ever. I don't care what you've ever accomplished. Don't exalt yourself over everybody. And you have to do that every day. All of us have to do that every day. And there's a lot of reasons why some of us might be younger. A lot of you are younger than me and stronger and faster now as I get older. But we all have things that we're good at. I can't, for example, sing. So some of you, almost all of you probably can out-sing me. Whatever you have, each of us has our special things that we shine on. But we can't do that with ego. Everything should be of service. So that's another thing. As a Baha'i, our focus should be on service. So I have a foundation. I have two foundations. Julie and Grace, which is my family foundation, and I started a Baha'i-inspired foundation, which I unfortunately had to close down. I'm actually winding it down right now in a very public lawsuit, and I became a target. And so actually this is public knowledge, but I'll say it, that about a month ago, my daughter was targeted. There was a threat that she was going to be kidnapped and killed. And so I've had multiple death threats. I've had a lot of things going on. And that and some other internal threats caused me to close down the foundation. But one of the things that actually influenced me was there were some people there internally who had forgotten about the service. And it became more of, we had forgotten why we're there. And so I'm committed to giving away the majority of my wealth. I remain committed to that. But I'm going to do it privately. And part of it is I want to make sure that when I give away wealth, that I'm not a target. And so I think we had gotten away from the issue of service. And so we were spending a lot of money that we didn't need to spend. And it really bothered me because to me, the most important thing with the foundation is to give to communities. And actually, what I'm going to do is give much more quietly now to the same communities, but I'm going to save a lot of money doing it because we were spending a lot of money on travel, we were spending a lot of money on conferences, but I don't think we were as effective. And to me, every dollar I give has to be as effective as possible. And I think the focus has to be on service always. And it should be everything you do. So what Baha'u'llah said, in this dispensation, in this age, work is worship as long as it's done in the spirit of service. So first thing, everyone you look at, see the face of God. Don't exalt yourself over anybody, and do everything with the spirit of service. So that's what I'm trying to do. So a couple of my ventures right now, I'm actually starting up a podcast network. So we have a podcast right now. We have a couple. One is Rainn Wilson's. Has anyone listened to Soul Boom? If you haven't, it's a wonderful podcast with my wonderful friend Rainn. And then we have a podcast called Man Enough, which has been successful. And so I thought, well, we should probably expand this. And we ended up hiring someone who's built a great podcast network. And he's come to Companion Arts, which is our sister company to Wayfarer Studios. What's the purpose of this podcast network? To bring goodness, to have podcasts which are positive and spiritual. I have a movie theater. So my movie theater is very good at losing money. Well, we're going to lose about $1 million this year, which should never be the goal of any business. But why are we doing it? Because my town in Highland Park, we had a terrible tragedy now 3 years ago. On July 4th, we had a shooting. 51 people were shot by a very sick young man. 7 of them died. And the local movie theater, and this was also coming off of COVID, was basically dead. No one was going. People were afraid to go to the movie theater. They're afraid of a mass shooting. And you know, of course, movie theaters have been suffering after COVID. So I was given the movie theater for free. Here's a movie theater that's losing money every month. Here you go. I just happened to have a family office in the same office with the landlord. So they gave me the theater, but what's the purpose of the theater? 2 things. To take this community that was suffering and try to contribute, because I've lived there for, now it's almost 30 years in this community, to lift up the community, unite the community, and the last thing is that I want to show, and we do show, films that are good for the soul. I believe that, and this is also the reason why I, along with the great Justin Baldoni, who I adore, we started Wayfair Studios to make films that uplift the world, that show the nobility of every person. And if you see the pattern of our films, it's different people, whether they be autistic, transgender, whatever, like people that maybe might not be appreciated, we're showing this. We have a film called Racist Trees looking at racism. We have a film that's, let me think of a couple others, film looking at body image. The great Ezra film we put out last year, which didn't do very well at the box office, but I love the film, is showing an autistic child. We have a film about paramedics coming out in September. We have a film about ageism, about a 59-year-old man who makes his college football team. True story, actually. I happen to be 59, and I'm not making any college football team, but I wouldn't have made it when I was 19, and I won't make it when I'm 59, but this man actually made his team. So what we're trying to do is lift up the world with everything we do, and what we're avoiding is a lot of what Hollywood does today, which is films that are chock full of violence and gratuitous sex and very negative images. I believe, and this is true for anyone who's in the arts, and I know there's a disproportionate of people here who are in the arts because we're in LA, that what we put in our soul matters. And so in the movie theater and in the movie studio, we're trying to serve humanity with what we do, and we're very particular about what we play. And I'm losing more money every month. I know this because there's movies I won't play, and I don't care. And I'm actually looking to expand what we're doing into some areas that will probably appreciate this more. We're looking at a couple places to expand right now. People who are looking for clean movies. How many people think that Hollywood probably could raise the quality of the subject matter? Look around, everyone look around. Almost every hand went up. And I can tell you that that's true most places I go. It's getting more true every day. Not just the quality of the films, but actually what they're about. And I think we're at a situation right now where that's becoming even more evident. So it's a good time to do that. Bottom line is, no matter what you do, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, an actress, a screenwriter, a producer, a banker, serve the world. Now, how do we do this? So something my foundation supports, which I'm very proud of, and my wife and I have supported. One of the reasons I became a Baha'i, it's not the only reason, I had already decided to become a Baha'i, but my company went public in 2014, and with my newfound wealth, the first thing I decided to do was contribute to a center in Chicago called Shy Cat. Basically inspired by a wonderful man by the name of Bill Strickland. And Bill works in had inspired 10 different centers in urban neighborhoods in Pittsburgh and other places, vocational for adults and arts for kids. And I thought, I want one of these in Chicago. So I called up Bill and we started building a place called Shy Cat, which has now been around for several years. And about 5 or 6 conversations in, Bill says, talking to these Jewish philanthropists in Miami about building one of these in Akko, Israel, for Jews and Arabs. And I almost fell out of my seat. For those of you who aren't Baha'is, Akko, Israel is where Baha'u'llah has been laid to rest. That's our point of adoration. We turn towards Akko and pray every day. Every Baha'i in the world does that. So here I am being asked to go to our Baha'i Mecca, essentially, and by someone who's not a Baha'i. I'd never been to Israel. I wasn't yet a Baha'i. I'd asked my wife to become a Baha'i. She told me I had to wait 2.5 years until after our kid's bar mitzvah. And so I was waiting to become a Baha'i, and I was summoned, I think, to Akko, and I walked outside the Shrine of Baha'u'llah on September 12th, 2014, and I've never been the same since. So I had a spiritual transformation that day. But I went there to build the center, which is now called ACAT, and it's absolutely amazing. It's run by a person who's become a very good friend who is a Christian Arab, and it's for Arabs and Jews. And it's 50% Arabs, 50% Jews, side by side. It's been running like this for years. And it's a rock in the community now. We have another project called United, which we support, which is also Arabs, Jews, and it's a high school, Arabs, Jews, and kids from 20 different countries that come together. And these things are beautiful. What people realize when they come together is that we're one. And during this terrible war that's going on now, I talked to the person who runs United, and she said the kids, it was a little tough, but they had no problems really. They had some difficult conversations, some tears, but they stayed together. They stayed united. Ironically, the name of their school. And the reason is we are so clearly one human family, but we separate ourselves on the basis of tribes. Actually, I had an Uber driver today from Rwanda. He said that things are much better now, but he says they've done away with the tribes there. Those tribes were fake. He said he agreed with me. But yet millions of people died in Rwanda because of those fake tribes. And we have the fake thing. So everything that we think is dividing us is an illusion. Race is an illusion. It's statistically an illusion. We are one human race. Some of us are darker, some of us are lighter, our hair is different, our eyes are different. Okay, get over it. It doesn't make someone better or worse. It is just an accident of climate. That's all. There is no value in it, one way or another. Same thing with nation. Same thing with religion. Why was I a Jew? So when I first started studying Christianity, I was 25. I had a friend of mine, actually he just asked me today. I told him I can't make it, we'll do it next year. But we've been studying the Christian faith for now over 30 years. And I kind of overshot the mark and became a Baha'i. But he was really hoping I'd become a Christian. My friend, Pastor Kevin, who introduced me to love Jesus, and I'm eternally grateful for him for that. When he first met me, I was 25, and he said, "Do you want to do Bible study?" I said, "No, I'm Jewish." He asked me again, I said, "No, I'm Jewish." And the third time I said, "Okay," and I started studying the Bible, and after a few months, I thought I was genetically unable to believe in Jesus. I did. I thought it was genetics. I thought, I'm Jewish, I can never believe in Jesus. And after a few months of studying the Bible, I'm like, what? Wait a second. Okay, wait a second. I never really considered this. Why can't I believe in Jesus? Do I not believe he existed? No, I do believe he existed. Do I not like no, I loved everything he said. I'm like, well, why don't I believe in him again? And I couldn't, so I came to love Jesus pretty quickly because his words are so beautiful. He's beautiful. And so I learned to, as the Baha'is would say, a manifestation or a messenger of God. I learned to love a messenger. And when Baha'u'llah came around, happened all over again. I learned to love a messenger. I encourage everybody to read the words of all the messengers. Why are we different religions? Because of prejudice. What I mean by that is we think we're right and others are wrong. I'm a Jew, the Christians are wrong. And not really, sometimes it's a little bit more gray than that, but why? Why limit ourselves to one messenger? If I'm correct, if Baha'u'llah is correct, really, not me, and all the messengers are unspeakably beautiful, why not love them all? Why limit yourself to one? And so the Baha'i Faith is the acknowledgement of the oneness of humanity and the oneness of God and the oneness of his messengers. Now imagine a world where everyone believed that. Imagine a world where people weren't killing each other over religion, over race, over nation. That is the real world. That's not an imaginary world. It sounds like an imaginary world based on where we live today. But really the imaginary world is the one we live in. The one where we imagine that race matters. The one where we imagine that nation matters. The one where we imagine that religion matters. The religion we were born into. Why are people different religions? Because we haven't searched for truth. That's what Abdul-Baha said. He said, if you forget what you know and you search for truth, you'll fall in love with all the messengers. How could you not? In my mind. Now, one of the main tenets of the Baha'i Faith is independent investigation of truth. So if you're not a Baha'i, don't bother listening to me. It's okay. You don't have to be a Baha'i. But I would investigate and ask yourself those same questions I did. Say, why not believe in Baha'u'llah? What does he say? What do I think? Study it for yourself and come to your own conclusions. And I believe that anyone who truly studies any of the messengers, whether it be Buddha, Muhammad, Baha'u'llah, will fall in love with them because they're all unspeakably beautiful. What's the ugly part? The followers, including us Baha'is. We're the ones who make it bad, including myself. So, we're not perfect human beings. But the messengers themselves, unspeakably beautiful. And that's that light we need in the world today. We need the light of the messengers. And I think particularly of the latest messenger, Baha'u'llah, that light he's brought to the world. So spread light. The world, how many people think the world's pretty dark right now? Raise your hand. Look at all those hands. It's not. It's lighter than it's ever been. And it's darker than it's ever been. For those of you who are Baha'is, this is going to sound pretty familiar. These are simultaneous, interwoven processes going on. So the process of disintegration and integration. The world is falling apart very quickly, and yet it's rising up very quickly. And those are two processes that are happening together. So the faster the world, so Baha'is are like, it's funny talking to Baha'is, oh wow, the world's falling apart, isn't that great? We're so happy about it because we know that the other process is going on even stronger, which is the world rising up. Imagine a forest full of decaying old trees that are blocking the sun, and you've got little saplings that need the sun to rise and grow. Those trees have to fall, and it's not pretty when an old tree falls. It makes a lot of noise. And that's what you see. You don't even notice that little sapling growing. But those little saplings are the big trees of the future, and those old trees must fall. The systems of the world have to die so that the new ones can rise up. In order to get to this world we're talking about, where everybody, regardless of race, religion, nation, gender, is treated as noble and equal, and we have a just and equitable and united world, those trees have to die. And it's going to be a little painful and a little messy. As a female Baha'i friend told me, we're in labor pains right now of a great new world order. By the way, world order is kind of trigger for some Christians, but the New World Order, I always say I'm very scared of the New World Order. The New World Order is really scary. It's warring nations who disagree about politics, who are totally corrupt and greedy, and it's just this world based on lies and superstition and just corruption and disunion and racism and sex. Oh, well, I'm sorry, that's the current world order. I always get confused. The New World Order, what is that? That's what Jesus is, what Baha'u'llah is. The New World Order is love and kindness and unity. It's all the spiritual virtues. It's a world that runs on those spiritual virtues. It's the world described in the Bible. It's ironic when Christians talk about the New World Order with such contempt because the Bible talks about the 1,000 years of peace. That's the New World Order, the New Jerusalem, which, by the way, Revelation 21:11 and 21:23 is lit in Arabic, when you have an Arabic Bible, lit by Baha'u'llah, the glory of God. It says it right there in the Bible. Look for the New Jerusalem lit by Baha'u'llah. Here he is. So I think that's, what we do is, I guess the last thing I'll say, because I want to open it up to some questions and not do all the talking. We're here to walk through the world and to spread oneness and love wherever we go, with everything we do. And in this world of accelerating destruction, we need to lean into it and spread that light even more. So when the darkness comes, spread the light. When the darkness hits you in the face, and believe me, this has been a year where that's happened for me a few times, spread the light. Spread the light. Sometimes the darkness knocks you out for a day or two. Stand back up and spread the light and never give up. We are going to get there. That world that Baha'u'llah described is coming. Whether we like it or not, we Baha'is especially, whether we do our part or not, it's coming. Whether we do our part is a duty, but it's more importantly, it's a bounty. And I encourage each and every one of you to get up tomorrow and spread that light. So with that, I'd like to open it up to questions.
World is about service, or all the religions talk about service. And when we feel that we are helpless, with the situation in hungry children when you see them, and you want to jump, help, what would you do in a situation like that? What kind of a service can you offer?
So there's the story, I would say, as a philanthropist, is this. It's the starfish story. There's a little boy, and there's hundreds of starfish dying on the sand. And the little boy goes in and throws one of the starfish in. And someone comes up to the little boy and says, well, there's hundreds of starfish dying, thousands of them, and you just threw the one in. What does it matter? He says it matters to that starfish. Help a starfish. And if we all help a starfish, if we all do our part, one person can make quite a difference. Think of the people that didn't say no. Think of what Martin Luther King was facing in the 1960s. Think about we have the whitewashed version of Martin Luther King today. He was a radical upon radical. He was hated. He was reviled. So much so that they killed him. But today we have this whitewashed, happy version of Martin Luther King. He was a radical. He was tearing the world apart. So much hatred spread against him. They said he had the heart of a 60-year-old man. I think he was in his 30s when he died. So much stress, and he would have died of a heart attack anyway. But yet he persisted. He was passionate about what he did. He wasn't perfect, but he was wonderful, and he spread that word. Think of Gandhi. One person. One of my favorites who I've been just blessed to meet and spend some time with and become friends with is Jane Goodall. One of my personal heroes, 300 years on the road. She's 90 years old. She has 10 times as much energy as I do at 90. And what does she do? She is living service. Now, I will say she's not a Baha'i, and I'll say something else. I don't like to talk badly about someone, but Jane Goodall likes to drink. And what do I think about that as a Baha'i who dislikes alcohol? I haven't had a drink since I was basically 18, and I've never liked alcohol, and I hate what it does in the world, and have a close relative and friend who's an alcoholic, so I've seen all the damage it does. And what do I think of that about Jane? I think it'd be wonderful if we had 1 million more Baha'is who do what Jane Goodall does and drink whatever they want. Because we don't judge people, and she's one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met. And so there are people like that. Most of us can't make the impact in the world that somebody as amazing as Jane Goodall, and I just have to say that with such emphasis with her, have made. But you can help that one starfish. So I was here, so my little conversation today. So this gentleman, Ray, right here, I walk up to him. I was in a cafe, La La Land, right near here, and I say, what does your hat say? OG Soul, what does it mean? And he looks up at me and he says, Steve Sarowitz? Ray and I have known each other for over 40 years, and we haven't seen each other for over 40 years in person. And so that's why he's here today. Little starfish moment. And so we started talking to 2 women, and now you're going to this wellness thing, right? And the other woman I taught the Baha'i Faith to. So you never know. There's a starfish moment in every day. And you never know where it occurs. Try just to lighten up. You don't have to save every starving child. It's not your responsibility. But if you can save one, that's great. If you can just make someone a little happier today, that's good. And tomorrow do that again. And those things spread. The light spreads and it multiplies. I will say this as a philanthropist. Sorry, long answer to a short question. That the problems of the world are not for lack of material wealth. They are spiritual. We are primarily spiritual beings. The reason I started the Wayfarer Foundation and the reason I'm going to continue to give in this way is to have spiritual solutions to spiritual problems. Elevate the spirit with everything you do. Next question, please.
Thank you so much for giving this presentation. And I'm actually asking this question because I'm a student at UCLA, and obviously there's a lot of discord going on with the political situation with Israel-Palestine. And I've been getting involved with different cultural groups and different religious clubs such as Hillel, Chabad, the Ruined Hindus, and I'm trying to get involved with the Muslim Student Association. And I'm just asking because you have experience with fostering unity between Palestinians and Jews. What are some ways that we could open up dialogue in a non-political and I guess we could say constructive way for a more peaceful resolution on campus?
Okay, so I had the same problem at U of I, and we created a coalition. So at University of Illinois, where I went to school, this is before October 7th, actually a couple years before, 3 years before. My mother called me one day and said, "You have to go solve the problem. They have an anti-Semitism problem at U of I." I said, what am I going to do, Mom? She says, "No, you have to solve it." Like, my mother thinks I can do everything. So I went down to U of I and I started asking questions, and I talked to the head of Hillel and I talked to the Chabad rabbi, and I said, "What's the problem?" They said, "Well, student government is extremely anti-Semitic," which it was. It was led by a young woman who was literally friends with terrorists. I mean, when I say actual terrorists. And I said, "Well, is she a terrorist?" And pretty much everyone told me she was. And so I'm like, oh, that's not good. And with student government, all they wanted to do was do BDS. And, you know, look, everyone can have their political opinions. There's no problem. It's, you know, as Baha'is, we would welcome different opinions. But the problem was that it was a very hostile environment for Jews. And they were doing some things that were really nasty to Jews. They were kicking Jews off the student government. They were physically beating up Jews. They were throwing rocks at them. So there were some real problems. And student government was kind of the center for the anti-Semitism. So I believe that, again, you can believe anything you want, but you can't hate people. And so what we did is we didn't actually talk about that. We created a coalition, a unity coalition, and we said, in this coalition, to be part of this coalition, you couldn't hate Hindus. You mentioned Hindus. You couldn't hate Muslims. You mentioned Muslims. You couldn't hate Christians. You couldn't hate black people, brown people, Native Americans. You couldn't hate women. You couldn't hate left-handed people, gay people, straight people, trans people. One other one. Oh yeah, Jews. You couldn't hate Jews. Forgot about that. That was like the last little asterisk. You didn't have to like Israel. You could hate everything Israel's ever done, but you couldn't hate Jews. And so that was the coalition. You didn't have to be Jewish, because it doesn't work if it becomes the Jews against the rest of the world. And I told the Jews this. And so we created a unity coalition. The first year, we made a big dent in the state, in the student government. The second year, we took over student government with the unity coalition. The hate was gone. And when October 7th happened, and all of the anti-Semitism started spreading all over different college campuses, U of I was probably the best, one of the better ones in the Midwest. It had been by far the worst. It was being written up for its anti-Semitism nationally. And so we solved the problem. Not perfectly. There were still a couple problems, but it was much, much better than it was. And so my answer is go to everybody. I love the idea of going to the Muslims and talk about your common humanity and talk about we just want, and really elevate the conversation. Instead of saying, don't do hate, say we want to talk about love, and everyone's invited, and you're invited to the party. And just say, look, we want your voice. And really, say we love Muslims, we want you to come. We love Jews, you're going to be side by side with the Jews. And if they don't want to come, they don't have to, but some of them will come. I have a guy named Yogev, who we hired at U of I to do this, and he had come from University of Wisconsin, and in that time he did something very similar, and he had the Muslim Student Association working on behalf of the Jews. So it can be done. Appeal to love, appeal to the higher power, and appeal to a larger unity. Outlove the hate.
Thank you.
Oh, in the course of your career as a successful entrepreneur, and especially through that path of funding rounds and going to IPO, you're dealing with people, organizations that just see you as an opportunity, and your company as an opportunity to make money, and they have their agenda. How do you, just along the way, how do you reconcile that with your principles?
Well, I wasn't a Baha'i when I was busy making all the money. But I think I was a pretty moral person. I think I've become slightly more moral. There's a few little things I would do back then that I wouldn't do now. But I think I was always pretty honest and pretty fair. And I made my money honestly, running a Paylocity, which is a payroll and HR company. I think for me, there's no problem with making money. My goal now is serve first, make money second. But then I can do that because I've made enough money that I don't have to work. And in fact, I'm more concerned with giving it away. I think, my advice to young entrepreneurs is do the right thing first and make money second. And I've invested with a couple young Baha'is. There's a company called Rapbook. If anyone knows Ali Javid, I see some fans right back there. He's done a great job, a young Baha'i. So I've invested in a couple young Baha'is. I've invested in another company called Tiny Souls, run by the great Shadi Tului Wallace and Denise Sabat. And they're building a beautiful program for kids. But I think the one thing I would say is never, ever leave your morals behind. And I believe, and this is something it's a theory I haven't quite proved out yet, but it seems to be like, I've invested in a few companies and my investments actually seem to be getting much better now that I'm leading with the Bahá'í Faith. I have a little company I invested in, just on a whim, I invested in this little company called Indie. And there's now an offer on the table to buy the company. And I think my investment will go up anywhere between, I have to figure this, anywhere between 5 and 15 times what I invested in just within 5 years. And so that's not bad. And it's a company that really operates very much, they're not Baha'is, but they're very, very much enamored with the Baha'i Faith. And I think as I look at companies to invest in, companies that run that way are going to be more successful. My thought is this: if we run with all the spiritual virtues, of course we're going to be more successful. And the way I think of it is this, that Baha'u'llah has given us the roadmap for success in this age, and that would apply to everything, philanthropy, business. It's not a bad thing. And I think there's a transition going on. By the way, podcasts, I'm getting into podcasts. Who's the number one podcast person on Apple right now? Does anyone know? Everyone says Joe Rogan. It's not. It's a woman. Mel Robbins it is. Mel Robbins this year went from nothing to boom. She's now number one on Apple. Why is Mel Robbins number one? Because she's positive. The same thing is going to happen with movies. I'm going to tell you right now. Not because I'm so brilliant, because I'm not, but it's because everything's going to move towards Baha'u'llah. When I became a Baha'i 10 years ago, I said people are going to start drinking less, and some of my friends thought I was crazy. Guess what's happened in the last 10 years? Significant decline in drinking. The same thing's going to happen with drugs. Why? Because Baha'u'llah says it. The same thing in business. We don't have to be dog eat dog. We can be loving and kind. Quite honestly, we've had a long year with Wayfarer Studios, but prior to some problems we've had recently, we were the talk of the town. We had every major studio knocking on our door, and we will have that again. We've had a lot of success in a short period of time, making the films we want to make. You can be kind, you can be good, and you can succeed. There will be adversity. There will be people that don't like it. Darkness hates the light. Stay light.
You had mentioned love them all, believe in them all, but what about the idea of one of them's the Messiah? And do you think you could be Jewish and be Baha'i?
Well, here's what I would say for me. So, first of all, investigate the truth for yourself. Baha'u'llah did claim to be the Messiah.
Did or did not?
He did. He claimed to be the promised one of all faiths. He claimed to be the Messiah, the return of Christ. He was all of that. Now, the question is, what is Messiah anyway? Messiah is the promised one, right? Really, there's two different ways to look at it. When we get into the world of names, which I was talking about, that's when we get into the weeds and we start getting lost. But what if I said, instead of the Messiah, I said Baha'u'llah was a messenger who came to light up the world in this age. Right. Moses was a messenger who came to light up the world in his age. That's another way of saying it, which might be a little bit less divisive. When we get into terms like return of Christ or Messiah, sometimes that takes people aback. I would say look at Baha'u'llah, look at what he stood for. He taught love. I mean, you read his writings. His writings are spectacular. So he taught love and kindness. So what is the Messiah? It's that. So
as Jews are taught, it's the person who brings world peace.
And that's exactly what Baha'u'llah did. He came with world peace. He said, I've come with the most great peace. And world peace is already here. We're just waiting to implement it. Or Christians are looking for God's kingdom on earth. It's already here. It's there in the Baha'i writings. The roadmap is right there. What the mistake I think some people make is they think that peace will happen instantly. As soon as the Messiah comes, peace will come. But nothing happens instantly. Believe it or not, I wasn't born 6'6". I was born about a very big baby, but I wasn't this tall. So people grow over time. Trees grow over time. People grow over time. Societies, companies, everything starts small and grows. And world peace is growing as we speak. It's up to us to continue to grow it. And if we look at it that way, it becomes a lot easier to see Baha'u'llah bringing the peace.
So can you be more than one religion? Is Baha'i considered a religion?
Baha'i is considered a religion. What I would say is this: I'm a Jew as long as I can be a Christian. I'm a Christian as long as I can also be a Muslim. And I'm a Muslim as long as I can be a Baha'i. From my perspective, I believe in the truth of all the religions. But believing in the truth of all the religions actually makes me a Baha'i. When I first became a Baha'i, I struggled with that because I didn't want to declare any religion. I'm like, well, that's divisive. And then I realized by declaring myself a Baha'i, I was saying I believed in the truth of all the religions. And that's okay. When you become a Baha'i, when I became a Baha'i, I just declared my faith in Baha'u'llah and that I would try to follow the laws of Baha'u'llah for the love of Baha'u'llah. That's what every Baha'i does. And to me, that's great. Religion should never be a source of discord. Baha'u'llah says if religion is a source of strife and discord, it's better to have no religion. But the next line is, but then we should search for true religion. I believe that Baha'i is true religion. By the way, I also believe in Judaism. I also believe in Christianity. But what I believe is essentially that this is what Baha'u'llah taught, that this is a single faith of God. So the idea of which finger do you believe in a hand is kind of silly. It's the hand. It's all of them. And so what Baha'u'llah is saying is, I don't believe in this finger, but not this finger. I believe in all the fingers. And what's happening actually is this progressive revelation that God in every age is sending a messenger. And the messenger of the age says, I'm the way, follow me. Buddha said he was the way. Krishna said he was the way. Muhammad said he was the straight path. Now Baha'u'llah says he's the way. Jesus said he was the way. Which one's the way? Yes, they're all the way. And when we take the names away, like Messiah, or Jesus, or Moses, it's all one. It's just the faith of God. I believe in the faith of God. Take the names away. And if you take the names away, you see it's a singular faith. To be honest, as a Baha'i, I am also, in my opinion, a Jew, but I'm a Jew who believes in Christ, so I'm a Christian. But I'm a Christian who believes in Muhammad.
When you say believes in the teaching, I was different than believes he was the Messiah, right?
Well, I do believe he was the Messiah.
Right.
I believe that Jesus was the Messiah.
World peace is here. Can you elaborate?
Well, I believe that Jesus was the Messiah, the one sent to the Jews 2,000 years ago. He was what was expected 2,000 years ago. But what Jesus himself said, he said, I've come with a sword, not with peace. Jesus said, I haven't come with peace. They thought he said he would come back. He said, I will come, Matthew 16:27, Mark 8:38, Luke 9:26. Jesus says, I will come in the glory of my Father, Baha'u'llah. So he says, I'll come in the future in the glory of God. And then he says, when I come back, he says, I'm going to come back as the Spirit of truth. He says, I have more to tell you now, albeit you can, I have more to tell you, albeit you can't bear it now, albeit when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he'll tell you of all things. That's John 16:12-13. So basically in the Bible, Jesus is saying, here I am, this is the message for today, and I'm going to come back. And Baha'u'llah, when he comes, cites that and says, here I am, I've come back, and here's the message for this age. And he cites that specific thing and calls himself the Spirit of truth. And so to go to more specific things, 2,000 years ago, Jesus the Christ, Jesus the Messiah, didn't talk about equality for women and men. Why? Not because he didn't know it. Moses knew it. Jesus, according to Baha'u'llah, all the messengers knew this. He says, women and men have always been equal in the eyes of God, and the messengers are the eyes of God. So why didn't Jesus talk about it? Because we couldn't bear it then. He doesn't talk about the oneness of race. He doesn't talk about the oneness of nation. Why? There's no concept of nation then. No one would have understood it. Baha'u'llah talks about the need for harmony between science and religion. Why? Because there is such a thing as science. Jesus couldn't have talked about it. They didn't have a word for science back then. So the Bible doesn't talk about science. So essentially what I'm really saying is in this age, what does God want for us? And I believe Baha'u'llah has brought that message with specifics for this age. Moses brought the specifics for his age. Jesus for his, Muhammad for his. So by being a Baha'i, I'm saying, okay, God, I believe in all of your messengers. I believe in the perfection of Moses and Jesus. To me, the unity comes in the messenger, because the messenger is one. The messenger, Baha'u'llah has this beautiful thing where he says, in one time this happened to me, and another time this happened. In a sense that he's all the messengers. And so instead of saying Jesus, I say the messenger, sometimes the messenger of God. Instead of Moses, the messenger of God. Instead of Baha'u'llah, the messenger of God. If I believe in the messenger of God for this age, in this Baha'i era, which is what I believe we're in, I'm a Baha'i. That's my answer to it. I guess it's not perfect, but that's my answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. I just have a question. There's so much corruption in Hollywood, and there's a lot of
I hadn't noticed.
and there's a lot of corruption with money too. My question is, how do you stay awake? How do you close the door on people that are corrupt? And with me at least, I tend to want to give people second chances and stuff like that. How do you know when you're done with someone, or when you're ready to say, I'm done?
Well, I can tell you that I'm not perfect in that respect. So we're in a large lawsuit right now, which I can't comment on, other to say that, yeah, sometimes there's people that you disagree with, and we're having a very public disagreement right now. Baha'u'llah says this. He says, O friend, in the garden of thy heart, plant naught but the rose of love. And from the nightingale of affection and desire, that's Baha'u'llah, loosen not thy hold. Treasure the companionship of the righteous, and eschew all fellowship with the ungodly. So that means that when you determine someone is kind of going the wrong direction and is not coming back, it's okay not to associate with them. And then treasure the companionship of the righteous. So, I'm going to say this. I don't usually say anything negative about, I try not to say anything negative publicly about anybody, because as Baha'is, we're not supposed to do that. But I can say positive things. So I'm going to say that I just called, tonight from here, I called the CEO of Wayfarer, Jamie Heath. And I'll publicly say this, I probably regret it, I love Jamie Heath. And I love Justin Baldoni. We've been running this studio, and we're going through a tough time. I can tell you, and I'm going to be honest when I say this, there has never been for one moment a cessation of love between any one of the three of us. We have just out and out loved each other. Right through, we've been going through a tough time the last year. Never once have I said, I hate Justin, I'm mad at Justin, I'm mad at Jamie. I love those guys, and I think they're amazing guys, and I'm defending them with my life right now. And I'd say that I will be with them the rest of my life. I'm loyal to them, not because we're Baha'is, not because they're my business partners, not because I want to make money with them, although I would love to. I just adore them. I think they're amazing guys, and I adore them. And so I think they're righteous people, and I'm staying with them. And Tara Hanks, who is our president, the righteous people. And by the way, some of my friends in this room, you're righteous. I'm happy to be around you. And to me, that's you surround yourself with people you love. And life isn't so terrible. It's interesting, in the midst of a very public lawsuit, our unity is ever present. And you know who's noticed it? Our lawyers. Our lawyers and the whole team is very united and very happy with each other. So I can tell you, in the midst of a really public and sometimes maybe contentious lawsuit, we have a lot of unity within the team. So treasure the companionship of the righteous and eschew all fellowship with the ungodly. So if someone's giving you a hard time, you don't have to hate them, but you might not work with them again. You don't try to bring them down, but you kiss them goodbye and say, thank you, it was nice working with you, and you don't work with them again. And that's okay. Give yourself permission for that.
Thank you.
How were you introduced to the Baha'i Faith?
I was running with a Baha'i friend of mine. So how was I introduced to the Baha'i Faith? I was running with a Baha'i friend of mine by the name of Tim Hendershot, who unfortunately is very disabled now. He's been very disabled for about 15 years. He and his wife invited me to do a study group at their house called Rui, for those of you who aren't Baha'i. It's a Baha'i study group. And I did this study group, and I did it for a few years. And after a few years, like I said, I went home to my wife and said I was a Baha'i. And she said, no, you're Jewish, I'm Catholic, we have to wait till after the bar mitzvah. But it was really, I actually heard about it the first time when I was a student at U of I, University of Illinois, and someone talked about progressive revelation, which is kind of what I introduced a little bit tonight. And I just always loved the idea of unity. But Tim was really influential in getting me to study a little bit more depth. And as I studied the faith in more depth and started reading the books, I fell in love with the Baha'i Faith, with Baha'u'llah. Actually, to be honest, with Abdul Baha first, his son.
Maybe last question. I was wondering how we would, if you were to use the Baha'i writings in terms of how you deal with doubt and certainty, especially in your faith as well as in your workplace. If you can use the Baha'i writings in order to
Baha'u'llah says, immerse yourself in the ocean of my words. So he literally says, read the words day and night. So right now I'm rereading the Book of Certitude. That's what I was doing this afternoon, rereading the Book of Certitude for the umpteenth time. So literally you're supposed to wake up in the morning, read the Baha'i writings, and go to sleep at night reading the Baha'i writings. And I'm really starting to try to get into that again. Meditation, prayer every day, say your obligatory prayers every day. When you're swimming in the ocean of goodness, it really protects you. Faith is a personal thing. And look, everyone has moments where they doubt. I haven't. I honestly have to say this, I personally haven't. But part of it is when I was 6 months old, my mother almost died. She had a life after death experience, and God talked to her and showed her flashbacks of her life and said, do you want to go on to the next world or stay in this one? And she chose to stay in this one. And 59 years later, she's still here, thank God. Now 85. She was 25 when this happened. So I always believed in God. And I had this incredibly powerful experience at the Shrine of Baha'u'llah, and I've never been the same since then. I have unwavering faith in Baha'u'llah. I've been blessed with that. I hope no one ever knows, and I would say that's a gift and it could be taken away. So I'm grateful for it every day. But for the last 10 years, I've never doubted that Baha'u'llah is who he says he is, and that this is the Baha'i era, and I love God and Baha'u'llah. I'm thankful for that every day, and I wake up every day like that. Doesn't mean I wake up every day happy. It doesn't mean that I don't forget to praise Baha'u'llah some days or sometimes get in the world, because it's been a rough year for me. I've had a lot of challenges. But I think it's kind of, to me, it's like when you have that faith and when you're working the faith, you go down underwater and you bob back up to the top. I actually feel sorry for people that don't have the faith, because there's a lot of trials in the world right now. And I think the more you really work on your faith, the more you can go through these trials. I mean, it's not easy when someone threatens to kill your daughter. And my daughter is being protected by Mossad right now, by Mossad agents, my son too, full time, 24 hours a day. Because we had 7 different threats against her. The person who made the threats is arrested, is in jail now, but we don't know that he's the only one. I mean, so that's a hard thing to go through. It's a hard thing as a father, believe me. I'm nice and calm right now. I wasn't calm when I received those threats. I was angry. I love my daughter more than life itself. And when someone threatens your daughter, that's hard. So those are the kind of things that can pull you away from God. And it's only by the grace of God that I have this very solid faith and can come back up. But that definitely pulled me down for a day or two. Because I wasn't thinking about God. I was thinking about finding that man. Liam Neeson-like. I will find you. I have a particular set of skills. But I'm a Baha'i. Ultimately, I'm a Baha'i. And my skill is to love the world. Even the young man, the sick young man, who sent those terrible notes threatening to put my daughter on a slab, I have to love him. So no matter what life throws at you, you have to. I think the more faith you have, the more, but it's a work thing. It's something like Michael Jordan. I'm a Chicagoan, so I have to say he's the greatest basketball player ever, just because he was. And LeBron, who I don't know. He's also a very good player, by the way. But Michael Jordan didn't make his high school basketball team, but he was the most competitive guy, and he worked his way through this. Same thing with Tom Brady. He wasn't particularly successful early on in his career, but he became the greatest quarterback ever because he outworked everyone. We should do the same thing with faith. work every day. It's not easy. We should work every day on our faith. And if we do that, that will give us a solid basis. In a world that's not always easy, especially now.
Do we have any ceremony if a person wants to become a Baha'i, or what we have to give up?
So every one of us is carrying around a box of rocks, a bag of rocks. This is from Roy, by the way, from Baha'i Study Group. That we think is very valuable, but it's rocks. We don't see the rocks. And we could exchange those rocks for diamonds, but we think those rocks are diamonds. If we let go of those rocks, we'll see them for the rocks they were. Sacrifice is not sacrificing something better for lesser. Sacrifice is giving up something lesser for the better. You don't sacrifice. Becoming a Baha'i is a great sacrifice. But what are you sacrificing? You're sacrificing maybe older beliefs, traditions perhaps. In my case, my family, my dad told me I joined a cult for 6 years. But after 6 years, he called me up crying and he said, you know what? You've become a better person. And he's been nice ever since then, the last 4 years. And he was even in Baha'i study groups earlier this year. So I think that whatever you think you're giving up, you're not. That's my personal opinion. Again, I would never tell anyone they have to become a Baha'i. My personal experience is great, but it's everyone's journey. First tenet of the Baha'i Faith, independent investigation of truth. But in my opinion, you give up nothing to become a Baha'i. What do? You find, to me, these great writings of Baha'u'llah, the spirit of Baha'u'llah, a great community of Baha'is, and I've met wonderful Baha'is all around the world. And I would say the number one thing, guidance for this age. In this difficult age, Baha'u'llah has given us guidance on how to unite the world, to lift us up individually and collectively. In a very difficult age where we're going through a lot of trials and tests, Baha'u'llah has given us this. And this beautiful, wonderfully, spectacularly beautiful writings, this ocean of words to lift us up on our most difficult days. That's what you're getting when you become a Baha'i. Whatever I gave up was less than that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Steve. This is awesome.